Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. Thanks so much for joining our first grooming session. But before we start, let me do a quick assessment. Could you please rate yourself in terms of what you know about groups? Rate from 1 to 10.
2. I know what it is in general, but literally that's it.
Okay, good. Thanks for taking the lead.
I'm hearing this word for the first time, so I'd say it's 1 for me.
Very good. No worries, I'll explain everything.
I think I'm like 6. I actually played GURPS with my friends a few years ago. I don't remember all the details, but overall, I know how it works.
Oh, that's great. We have our own subject matter expert here. I really hope that you will help me to sort things out here. So the first mistake is the curse of knowledge, and here's what it means. If you write user stories for your product, you are miles ahead from your team in terms of business analysis. Therefore, you assume that all other people have the same level of knowledge as you do. That's not true by default. And what's even worse, your different team members are on different level of understanding of your product's requirements. So your first goal is to bring everyone to the same level. And this quick assessment that I just demoed is a great tool for you to set the baseline of understanding. And from there you can start explaining the business need and dig deeper into the requirements. But have you noticed that something was wrong in the conversation that I just had with my team? And actually it's the second mistake. You assume that it's your sole responsibility to deliver all the information. Instead, the whole team should come prepared for grooming or sprint planning sessions. And yes, it means that you need to give them a prior notice about user stories you'll discuss during those meetings. So in practice, when I set up a grooming session for an hour, I list out about 5 user stories right in the meeting invite, and I put direct links to Jira tickets. In the previous video, I explained how to write great user stories and what to include in titles, descriptions and acceptance criteria. And there was general information about what the GURPS is. So in practice there shouldn't be such answers as "I have zero knowledge of the topic", because it's a waste of precious meeting time. But in any case, the first tip still stands true. You need to provide the baseline information to everyone. So let me give you an example of how it looks like in the real world. Okay, let me give you some background information. GURPS is a role-playing game, and usually people sit at the table and the most of the playing actually happens by talking in conversations. There are many rules that explain what you can do in the game. However, the plot, the scenes, the overall action is all described by talking. Players have their characters. And now, when an important action needs to happen, you need to roll 3 dice. And based on what you get on those dice, you will succeed or fail. So, any questions so far?
Dimitro, it's important to note that a game master or GM leads the game. The person describes the scenes and plays all the other characters in the game.
So, do we create an app for players? Or this GM? Who is the end user?
That's a great question, because lots of in-game rules are tied to the character that a player has. So it makes sense to tie our application to the character, not a GM. Moreover, it will bring more subscriptions, as you understand. And in future we can think about how to get the character sheets into our application. Anyway, our first version of application will include only 2 calculators: explosions and ranged attacks. After first release, we can think about all other games and rules that we have. Usually this conversation can go on and on for quite some time, and that's a real example of how a Scrum team discusses the high-level business requirements. But let's get back to our mistakes with user stories. Next, I'll demonstrate the third common issue. So our app needs to help GURPS players to calculate the success roll. So, for example, if you want to shoot someone with a gun, you need to calculate the to-hit number. So first you need to consider your character's skill level. Then you need to modify it by range, size of the target and its speed, and some additional actions like aiming or shooting in bursts.
Oh, it sounds fun. Such a dramatic change after my last fintech project, where I had to test analytical dashboards.
Yeah, so true. That's why we'll use an app with tabs for each of our calculator, and then we'll have a prominent to-hit number at the top. And also we'll use some sections with sliders for different modifiers. Okay, let's pause here. Think for a moment, what am I doing wrong here? Many IT project managers and business analysts do this mistake when working with Scrum teams. Essentially, I took complete control over the whole requirements definition process. Moreover, I dictated UI design and concept, even though I have a professional UI designer on the team. Instead, you should set the general direction and align the team towards the project objectives. However, you should not monopolize the decision-making inside the team. So it's a critical concept for all non-IT project managers who wishes to get into the IT industry. You must facilitate your team and you must leverage their best expertise as much as possible. Therefore, I should have stopped on the general information and switched directly to discussing user stories.
Oh, it sounds fun. Such a dramatic change after my last fintech project, where I had to test analytical dashboards.
Yeah, so true. That's why here's our first user story. As a groups player, I need a simple navigation so that I can switch between calculators.
We can start with native iOS tabs like in the App Store. That's what all iOS users intuitively understand. However, if we think about extending the number of calculators in the future, we need a menu or something.
Agree. The tabs approach is the right way to go, at least for now.
Okay, sounds good to me. Oh, by the way, it's another critical mistake that IT project managers usually do with user stories. You see, you want to plan all the requirements several steps into the future. I understand you want to optimize resources that you spend, but in the agile world it's totally fine to develop this functionality iteratively. That's why we can start with one UI design right now. And it will take maybe 2 or 3 major releases before we develop enough calculators so that they don't fit into the screen. So don't try to identify a perfect solution right from the start, because actually you never know how the business requirements will change all the time. So instead, focus on delivering small increments of value directly to the end users. In the previous video, I deliberately showed an example of advanced business analysis that you can apply to a user story. Yes, sometimes it may take place in software development, but in most of the cases it's just another common mistake. You see, I described all the capabilities of a login screen in one user story. There were details about all the fields, validations, different acceptance criteria for different errors, and so on. In practice, it's a huge user story that adds bits of different types of value to customers. And here comes the law of diminishing returns. In fact, we need just a few pieces of functionality on our login screen from the first day. And all the rest of bells and whistles, they add value to the customer, but it's not the primary value of our product. So instead, it's better to develop a minimum viable login screen and then dedicate all the resources to the calculators, which are the main value for our customers. If you find this video useful, please click the like button right now, because it will show me that you want more of such videos where I share my practical experience and examples from IT project management. That's why let me give you an example of how to discuss a user story with the team. Alright, here's our next story. As a groups player, I want to select the range to the target so that I can quickly calculate the modifier. So the table in the book lists all the modifiers and it combines range, speed and the size of the target. But let's for now focus just on the range.
First of all, I can see 45 plus options here. So we need to think about a UI element that we'll use to select the required range. But I expect that there will be several attributes that we'll want to calculate, so we need to think about reusable components. Buttons, as in a calculator, are not an option, so slide or a wheel.
Yeah, good point. I'm not fond of these wheels as well, but sliders might be also difficult to use in this application. So can you please try to put together some native UI elements so we can play with them?
Yes, no problem. I can do it in a few hours.
Nice, thank you.
By the way, does our customer have brand style guidelines? What colors and fonts should we use?
No, they didn't provide anything like that, but I can ask them today. But in any case, we can try to mimic the style and colors from the PDFs and from their site.
What about ranges that fall in between these numbers?
Yeah, good catch. Actually, rules describe that as well. You need to round up to the next level in the table.
I think we should write a separate user story for that.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's capture it the right way. So, as a groups player, I want the calculator to round up to the next level in the table so that I can get the accurate modifier. Okay, it's too early. I'll think about how to write this title in a better way after the meeting. Hey Jane, could you please write the acceptance criteria for these two PBIs, and we'll discuss them during the sprint planning meeting.
Sure, no problem. I'll read the rules a bit more and capture what we need.
So that's how you discuss or groom user stories with your team and the common mistakes that you may make as an IT project manager. But that's just one skill set that an IT project manager must have. That's why I recommend that you watch the video on how to write user stories or how to do the business analysis in general. Click one of these videos right now because I'm waiting for you there to continue our conversation. Thanks for watching, see you next time.